Om. गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री Gurave Namaha. We are in Amrit Anubhav, chapter 2, verse OV number 27. And we are looking at the topic of Sri Guru Stavana, glory of the Guru. And yesterday it was told about the nakedness of the truth, the nakedness of the Guru Tattva, which is our essence, and only when it is free, it is only when it is completely naked, meaning when all the clothes of thoughts that we have put on the truth, put on the Guru Tattva, we want to see the Guru Tattva who is unlimited through the clothes of limitations. Then we are not going to be able to access the infinity, the all-pervasiveness that this principle is, because we are seeing through the eyes of limitations. See, we will not see it as it is. And to bring this change in vision towards within ourselves, we need to go beyond all the limitations. And that was what was told in the last chapter, last verse. Here it was told, we fail to see the Sat, the truth, because Asat becomes our perceptions. We are obsessed with the Asat. Asat means that which is non-existing. And what is non-existing? Name and form is non-existing. It is only an illusion. It is only a projection. You cannot have name and form as real and then call reality also as real. No. Because all the names and forms come and go. They are never permanent. But we have given it a status of reality, and therefore we remain away. We are not able to have the vision of the Sat, the existence, which is nothing but our own essential nature. Then we are unable to comprehend the knowledge, the Chit, because ignorance is our domain. See? And ignorance is nothing but living life at the desire level. We can come to know ignorance only by the symptoms, and the symptom is desire oriented living, likes and dislike oriented living. We recognize that mind can never come to comprehend the truth, the pure consciousness. It can never, because mind functions with limitations of thoughts. So how can limited thoughts come to know the substratum? It cannot. And the question is, then why is it thinking through thoughts? If mind is essentially the self, then why is it thinking of this its essence through thoughts? Out of ignorance. It has forgotten what its essential nature is, because it is obsessed with, and the consequence is it is obsessed with the forms, and it wants the happiness from the forms, not recognizing that happiness is its nature. And then domain, and are not known, and the bliss, knowing and not knowing the bliss, the ananda, because misery becomes our way of life. When we get obsessed, when we get attached to, when we become accept limitations as a way of life, start from desires, actions, doership, enjoyership, objects, everything. When limitation becomes the way of our life, then only one thing can come in our pocket, and that is miseries. So that which is our essential nature, Sat Chit Ananda, we have replaced it with the Asat, Achit and Dukkham. Now, having talked so much, so long about the greatness of the Guru Maharaj, Sant Jnaneshwar Maharaj despairs, not being able to truly describe his Guru, because description is through the mind by the agency of thoughts, and Guru is that who is beyond the agency of thoughts, is beyond the comprehension of the mind. Naturally, we must also get into this situation. The situation Jnaneshwar Maharaj is finding himself in here. Today's meditation was about that. That we slow down the mind by synchronizing it with the breath to such an extent that this habit of watching, wanting to know through thoughts, this has to subside. And that's what he's saying. He says, Ata zoto ihi shabdi kiti medau anumanachi mandi ha pramana hi wo nedhi kona hi ma. Now, how long will I try to infer the Guru by the words like he, who, etc., he being beyond all the means of knowledge and logic? He is not an object of cognition. He is not a concept to be known by the intellect. You cannot know that truth. You can be convinced about it, but conviction is not equal to being, realizing the Guru Maharaj. Same way, you may have great feelings in your heart, but feelings fall short of surrender. Feelings are not equal to surrender. See? Feelings is not abidance. How long will I go on trying to describe the Guru in inferential terms, such as he who is like this or that? I am unable to continue further in this manner because this Guru Maharaj does not allow any means of knowledge to be used to describe him. All my efforts fail and I become tongue-tied. The Guru Maharaj Guru Tattva doesn't allow me to use the names and forms to describe him. Because he is infinite, how can limited names and forms? And on the other hand, when I think about him, what is meditation? When I contemplate upon him, the one who was seeking the Guru vanishes. So he is not allowing the name and forms to reveal the Guru. And when I look at him directly, I vanish. अब क्या करेंगे? Now how do I put it across? This is the conundrum. This is the dilemma. And it's a very healthy dilemma. We must also fall into that dilemma. Then revelation will happen. See? The Guru Maharaj does not allow any means of knowledge to be used. No support, no thought, no conviction, no emotion, no object, no word, no breath, nothing has to be used, because the truth, the Guru, is self-existing. It is all that there is. It is the substratum. It is the foundation of everything. Well, from its point of view, there is no foundation. You cannot say sun is foundation of day and night, because from sun's point of view, there is no day and night. See? All my efforts fail and I become tongue-tied. We have talked about this, from efforts to effortlessness. The journey on the seat of meditation or in our daily life, even if you look at it, you get in from the morning, you put efforts. Now you started your day, you will put efforts only to become effortless when you go to sleep at night. See? So everything in our life begins with effort. If you look at it at a generally, so same way in our sadhana also, on the seat of meditation, we put efforts to come to the meditation, we put efforts to do breathing, we put efforts to sit straight, we put efforts to chant the mantra or contemplate, and we have to glide into effortlessness. If all this is not leading to effortlessness, then we have lost the plot. If japa, mantra chanting is not leading to effortless chanting and eventually going beyond chanting or no chanting, then we have lost the plot. We are still falling short somewhere. And that falling short is, the individuality is still intact, the doer is still there. See, the goal is not clear, the pathway is not clear. You're just beating about the bush with some mantra in your mind. The trajectory should be very clear. What should be the next stage? And once that those stages are clear, then we fall into whatever sadhana we have started and watch the symptoms. That's all we can do. Just like Jnaneshwar Maharaj is speaking so much about Guru Maharaj, and he observed himself that what am I doing? I'm talking about this, I'm giving this example, sun, snake, this, that, so many examples he gave. And he says, all my efforts fail and I become tongue-tied. I can't use words to explain him. The Guru Maharaj does not allow any pramana, vyapara, use of means of knowledge to describe him, because when the pramana or means of knowledge approaches him, the triputi of pramata, prameya, pramana, knower, known and means of knowledge are non-existent. Just like when the sleeper, the waker is thinking of surrendering to sleep, thinking of sleep, going into the bosom of the sleep, sleep will only come when the waker, who is desiring sleep as an object of experience, vanishes. See? So here in this case we want to know the Guru, we will not want to know the Guru Tattva, so the knower, known and the means of knowledge, all these three, they have to, because Triputi is that which is keeping the individuality alive, keeping the mind alive. And mind remains alive in two ways. Remember, one is when it is expressing and when it is manifesting, and the other is when it is non-manifest. So we are not talking about non-manifest, because non-manifest is ignorance. So here we are talking about manifestation. Right now you are awake, you are not sleeping, I hope. See? So we are awake, we are alive, we are not dead to ourselves. And only when we are awake we can begin this journey and come to know ourselves consciously. You can't do that in sleep. So here pramata means the knower, prameya means the known, and pramana means the means of knowledge. And what are these means of knowledge? Here it says in the as a note that first is arthapatti pramana, knowledge derived through implied meaning of the words. Then next one is anupalabdhi pramana, where absence becomes the means of knowledge. Example, his walking stick is not there, so he is not likely to be there. See? So absence becomes the so no, we have to go beyond the presence and absence. So we have to go, today's meditation was going beyond the presence of the mantra word and the absence of the word. He who is illuminating the presence and the absence of the word, that is our true nature. And for that we have to slow down the mind, and that was the exercise given today. Continuing, this thought is further elaborated to say that even speech needs to be suspended when the Guru is concerned, because Jeta Shabdachi Lipi Puse Tene Si Chavalo Baise Duzayacha Ragi Ruse Ekapanazo. When one tries to talk about Guru, the words fail, the speech is suspended, and the thought of duality is discarded, and hence the mention of oneness is not required. When we are in the presence of the Guru Tattva or the Guru Maharaj, there is no need to say that he is the Guru, he is the greatest, he is the realized person. Or when we are within on the seat of meditation, oh, I think I am the presence which is beyond absence and presence, presence and absence. I am the transcendental presence. You don't need to say those words, because the moment you say it, you are back in the mind. All that is required is maunam, utter silence. In that revelation comes, that abidance happens. Words fail when one wants to talk about the Guru. There are 3 stages in knowledge. Many Mahatmas, whenever they are asked to talk about their Guru, usually the words fail. Why? Because all the grace, whether it is the physical teacher in their life or Words will fail only when you have realized that the physical teacher is none other than the Guru Tattva. When that happens, then the words fail. If you have accepted Guru, the physical Guru as the Guru, then you will be a missionary spreading the name of the Guru far and wide. Convert everyone to your Guru. But the true devotee, the one who has surrendered at the altar of the Guru Maharaj, there is nothing for him to achieve, because he has come to realize the Guru Maharaj as he is. And what is as he is? As his own essential nature. See? Without words. Without any means of knowledge. Words is one of the means of knowledge. So words fail when one wants to talk about the Guru. There are three stages in this knowledge. What is that? Pratyaksha Jnanam or Drishya Jnanam gained through the senses. So, what is our knowledge at this moment? You are watching me on the computer, on the screen, and you know I am there. This is Pratyaksha Jnanam. Oh, it is Swami Paramananda only speaking, it's not someone else. This is your knowledge at this moment. When you look at yourself in the mirror, oh, it is me, Pratyaksha Jnanam. You don't stand in front of the mirror and say, oh, who's this fellow who has come in front? Pratyaksha Jnanam. Whatever you see, hear, touch, feel, taste at the sensory level, that you are directly associating with that object or stimuli, and you come to know that. If I am sitting here and someone speaks, majority of you, I know your voices, so the moment some question comes or someone says something, I am able to pick up. From the sound I pick up who this person could be. I can't see your face because some of you have put your videos off and I can't have all the videos faces on the screen. So just by voice I come to know it is that person. See? Pratyaksha Praman. Then second is Sukha Dukha Jnanam gained through the mind. Then the second knowledge is at the level of mind. What is that knowledge? It is Sukha Dukha. How does Sukha Dukha come about? How does joy and sorrow come about? The knowledge of joy, sorrow. How does it come about? It's coming. We create it more so by creating likes and living a life of likes and dislikes. See? So, the Pratyaksha Jnanam or Drishya Jnanam gained through the senses, and through the mind we gain joys and sorrows. Through the body we don't gain joys and sorrows. Through the five senses we do not gain joys and sorrows. That will be a foolish conclusion. Joys and sorrows are experienced only by the mind. You may taste something very nice. The tongue tastes it. But the joy that is experienced is by the mind, not by the tongue. See? And the third, that knowledge which is neither through the senses nor through the mind is Sakshi, namely that I am and that I am that consciousness. So, who is knowing? Or you can take, either you take that the whole world, all the five senses are working for the mind and the mind is working for someone else. You can take it that way. Oi. Or you can take it as that I, at this moment, I know that I am observing the screen. Therefore, I am not the screen. I know that these five senses are functioning. Therefore, I am not the five senses. I know that thoughts are coming and going in my mind. Therefore, I am not the thoughts. Then question comes, then who am I? Then I am the one who is witnessing that the thoughts are coming and going, the senses are taking in the stimuli, the body is functioning, the mouth is speaking. See, that witness I am. This is the initial stage. Merging will come afterward, but this is the initial stage. First, disassociate yourself from all activity. So what meditation we did today was to disassociate ourselves from the activity. Whether it is physical, coming to the seat of meditation, physical activity stopped, senses closed, direct perception stopped, pratyaksha pramana stopped. See? Then what is left inside? The thoughts. Now those thoughts have to be stopped. See? So that knowledge, and stopping that knowledge doesn't mean that you have to remove it from the mind. Mind can never be free of thoughts. Its job is to think. And as long as the life is there, body is there, and you are living, till then in the mind thoughts will come. You can't eradicate them. So don't even try that. But we regulate it. If at all, if mind wants to think, okay, think of one japa. Let it keep on thinking. We are not saying don't think. We are mind's friend. We are not enemy of the mind. Oh, you want to think? Yes. Instead of so many things, you think of one thing. And give it the reason, the logic, everything to the mind, not to the self. Or you think the way he is telling here, that I am witnessing that the senses are having direct perception of the five senses, stimuli, and I am watching that the mind is feeling emotions. One emotion came, it went away. Second came, it went away. Same way, I am watching that the thoughts are coming and going, convictions are happening, sometimes misunderstanding is happening, sometimes doubt is happening. All these things happen by way of thoughts only. So thoughts are coming and going. Even right now you are watching that in yourself. So who are you? The one who does not understand, or the one who is the watcher? This we have to determine about ourselves. Which one are we? Are we the one who is hijacked by the thoughts, or am I the one who is witnessing the thoughts? See? So that knowledge which is neither through the senses, because it comes and goes, nor through the mind, because thoughts come and go, and all that which is coming and going is known by someone, and that I am the witness, the sakshi, and that one who I am, who's watching all this, I am conscious. I am not a dead person. I am not I cannot say that I am not there. I am there. In my presence only all these things are coming and going. So ascertain that about yourself. Which one are you? Are you the man, or are you the husband, father, son? Which one are you? In that example, man is the permanent one. Father, brother, son, husband, they come and go. They are because of something. When there is nobody there, these roles do not appear. Then who is there when there is nothing to trigger those roles? Then when there is nothing to trigger those roles, then man is there, the substratum of all those roles. Exactly same way. And when from man's point of view look at those roles, then you will not be affected by those roles. Then you will keep them in check. You will not become obsessive father, you will not become obsessive husband or wife. See? Obsessive or possessive, both ways you can look at it. But for that you have to come to take the position of being the man and recognize that these are only roles which are happening. Same way, within ourselves, we have to take this position that I am the witness. Only when I lose myself in the objects of perception or in the thoughts and emotions, that's when all the sukha dukkha begin. That's when sukha dukkha begin. So the sukha dukkha of a wife, because of wife, experienced by husband, those joys and sorrows are not available to the father or the son, because that is experienced only by that particular role, husband. The joys and sorrows of of accepting yourself as a son are only available to that personality. And the moment you take the position of man, all the joys and sorrows which go into the various baskets of father, son, husband, brother, they all vanish. Where do they go then? Exactly the same way. The witness who is unattached, who is the illuminator, who is the overseer, observer of everything that is going on, that is our actual state right now also. It's unaffected by the perceptions, it's unaffected by the emotions, it's unaffected by the thought knowledge. Because the witness is independent of all these. The problem only begins when it gets attached. When it gets identified with the thoughts, when it gets identified with the emotions, when it gets identified with the perceptions, then the drama begins. But if the husband is divorced, then all the drama that was there with the wife, it's vanished with the divorce. See, the last one is referred to here as the Guru Tattva, is that where the script, that is the speech or words, cannot reach. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Taittiriya Upanishad says Guru Tattva is that where even the words cannot reach nor the mind can comprehend. See? So that eternal witness is the Guru Tattva essentially. And when it gets that, it's that simple. So it is our choice. Do I accept myself as the one attached to the body, to the senses, to the thoughts and emotions? Or do I accept myself as the observer of all these? There you are. That's all we have to bring about. And we don't even have to bring about, we have to recognize this is how it is even at this moment, even if I don't know it. And I don't know it because I'm obsessed with everything else. I'm choosing to remain not in myself as myself. I'm choosing not to be the observer. Yet our language speaks, tells us that we are the observer. I just noticed that I had this doubt. Isn't we say that? So if you notice the doubt appearing in the mind, then you are not the doubt. You are the observer of the doubt. Then why do you get identified with the doubt and become a doubtful personality? Think. Speech is totally ineffective, and one just uses expressions like he is wonderful, Ashcharyavat, etc. in describing the Guru because he cannot be comprehended by the audacity and vanity of the intellect, and because he is beyond the limitations of cause and effect. Now we are seeing in the chapter, the past chapter which we did in Vivek Chudamani, where the student, the seeker, came to abide in his essential nature, and the moment he came to know, the chapter was called Experience of Reality. He could not stop himself from, and what could he say? First he was talking about Neti Neti, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this. Then he came into Anvaya, that I am everything, I am this, I am, or I have always been like that. And in the end, how did that particular section conclude? He says, all this is because of the grace of the Guru. Because how much can he speak? He spoke 30-40 verses, I think, there. But after that, he has talked about, in whichever way he could put it across, he did to his own mind. But after that, all he could say was, Namastasmai, 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 Shri Gurave Namaha. All he could do was offer salutations. Mind cannot do anything else. When it takes mind, when it takes the support of the thoughts to express something, or not something, to explain, this takes the support of thoughts to explain that which is beyond the scope of the mind. It can try. If someone wants, who has not experienced what is gulab jamun, and you want to explain, you will explain, and afterwards you'll get frustrated by the explanations. Ala, kitna time waste kar diya maine. Yeah, take one gulab jamun and you only tell me what it is like. And that person eats the gulab jamun, and oh my God, nothing else, no words come out of. The look in his eyes and a smile on his face tells the one who had spent just now so many hours or days or written a PhD for the others what gulab jamun is. The look on the face tells that he knows what gulab jamun is, isn't it? Exactly the same. And no words need to be transacted after that. Exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. The usage of words, speech, keeps us away from the truth that we are. See? And this is the itch that we have. This is the itch that seeker had in Vivek Chudamani. This is the itch that Jnaneshwar Maharaj is having. Out of love, no doubt, out of love. And here he is not trying to tell the people that this is his experience. His Guru Maharaj has told him, tell your experience of reality. See, exactly the same thing. This whole text of Amrit Anubhav is experience of reality of Jnaneshwar Maharaj. In Vivek Chudamani, the topic was experience of reality after having listened to the 498 verses of Adi Shankaracharya. One student came to abide in his essential nature. And how long will you stay there? Once you know it is, mind comes back and clicks in. Now the mind is trying to process what just happened. What was this transcendental experience? And then all those verses were the explanations of that. Just like when Guru Maharaj asked him, now all these verses that we are seeing, Shiva Shakti Samavesh, Shri Guru Stavana, all these are deliberations of the mind to put in, to explain to itself, to explain it to itself what this transcendental experience was or is, because Jnaneshwar Maharaj is still experiencing that. Once you have come to know the truth, you always know the truth. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So that communion is all, that being is always there. It has never gone out of existence. It is ever existing. And it doesn't need to communicate also, because it is always. Then who is needing the communication? The mind. So the mind is trying to, Jnaneshwar Maharaj's mind is trying to tell itself, educate itself, communicate to itself as to what is going on even at that moment, because Jnaneshwar Maharaj is abiding in the self. The mind is besotted, it is completely surrendered to the self. And the vibration, you may say, or the infinite bliss or the love or the infinite knowledge, the recognition that that there has never been a time that the self is not, because this fellow has studied, the mind has studied everything. Now it has experienced directly that which it has been studying through the scriptures. Now it is trying to communicate that which cannot be communicated. So yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Words cannot do justice to the reality. Mind cannot comprehend the reality. Yet the Guru Maharaj has told Jnaneshwar Maharaj, put pen to paper, writing your experience of reality. Once when I was with Swamiji somewhere, and I think Wellington, and there was some satsang in some temple, and Swamiji said, today you give the satsang. And the moment I go there to do seva, to take care, to organize, and the moment out of the blue he said, Paramanand, you take the satsang. Enough of talking from my side, now I listen. The moment he said it, I became stunned. No words will come out in his presence. If it was someone, if it is you, how much I am speaking. But in front of him, words don't come out. See? Not out of fear, out of respect, out of love. See? So same way, when it comes to the essential nature, the Guru Tattva within, the mind becomes stunned. No words come out of it. And yet, now the Guru has instructed, speak. Now it is trying. There also he said, now don't worry, start firing. Then I had to give the satsang. He was sitting there. Initially I was conscious, then after I just, okay. See? The Guru Maharaj gets annoyed with the disciple if there is even a slightest hint of duality in his statements. Guru Maharaj doesn't get annoyed. It's a drama, a leela going on. Because then, if someone, we went to Vrindavan this time, and when we went to Vrindavan, we went to meet one of the disciples of Akhandanandji Maharaj, Swami Govindanand. Great, he's a doctor by profession and everything, and I have known him, but he couldn't remember or place me. But then when I reminded, then he said, yeah. And then I requested him to say a few words, and before saying, out of my imagined familiarity about him, I made a mistake. I know, the moment my mouth opened, I know I made a mistake. I said, oh, this is Swami Govindanandji, who is a disciple of Swami Akhandanandji, and he was a doctor, and his karma bhumi was London in the past. He must have studied and worked in London only for maybe 7, 5, maybe a decade. But he has been a sannyasi for last 50 years or 40 years. And yet, in my mind, only that his karma bhumi, his karma bhumi is here. He's been serving Akhandanandji since the 80s. And the moment I said it, the way Swamiji looked at me and smiled, I knew I had made a mistake. See? Words are never enough to describe the ultimate. They will make a mistake because they are inadequate to grasp the infinitude that the Guru Tattva is. How can limited talk about the unlimited? It's not within its scope. That story of a frog living in a well, when it and a bird drops a fish in the well. Where did you come from? I come from ocean, the fish says. Now, what is ocean? It's a very big, what do you call, accumulation of water. How big? Frog has always lived in the well. For him, well is all that there is. Kupamanduk vritti. This is called Kupamanduk vritti. Our mind functions that way. Kupamanduk vritti. And what is the well here? Our convictions. And what is the conviction? I am the body. This is the Kupamanduk vritti. There is infinitude available, and we are happy with only this body. We are only happy with this is my relation, where we can be part and parcel of the entire creation. But in that, by choosing one body to be myself, and then one wife and one child, we have just what you call we have concretized our personality rather than expanded our personality. See? What will be the experience of that frog when it reaches the shores of the ocean? because it has never seen the waters, such huge expanse of water. No words will come out of his mouth. Now, what words will he use to explain this expanse of water? Same thing happens to our mind. Same thing is happening to our Jnaneshwar Maharaj. Mind is ever exposed, surrendered at the altar of the Guru, and it is finding that the usage of words is inadequate to explain the expanse of the Guru Tattva, the all-inclusiveness of the Guru Tattva, the all-pervasiveness of the Guru Tattva, the infinitude of the Guru Tattva, the bliss of the Guru Tattva, the knowledge of the Guru Tattva. The mind is incapable. Aprapya manasa saha. The Guru Maharaj gets annoyed with the disciple if there is even the slightest hint of duality in his statements. Even the statement that there is oneness between Guru and Shishya offends his sense of oneness. How beautifully Swamiji has written that even the statement that there is oneness between the Guru and Shishya, the fact that you have accepted that there is Guru and Shishya itself is abusing that Guru Tattva. It's abusing that Guru Tattva. And that Guru Tattva is our essential nature, understand. So we are not talking about a concept, we are talking about the self that we are. To talk about it in duality is doing disservice to it. So here Swamiji says, even the statement that there is oneness between the Guru and Shishya offends his sense of oneness, because oneness has relevance only with reference to duality. Because this example Jnaneshwar Maharaj took in the beginning of this chapter, that Guru and Shishya are one in essence. Guru Maharaj knows that one reality at one place is expressing as the Guru, and another place the self is expressing as the Shishya. To talk like this also is not correct, he's saying here, because he says, because oneness has relevance only with reference to duality. You are talking about one because as an opposition to manyness or duality or to two. When we say the words which come in the Upanishads, one without a second, one without a second, so that one is there only because the second is there. But if there was no second, then what would it be? As it is? Then it is as it is. We talk about the word substratum or foundation because our attention is on what is constructed on that foundation. So there must be something on which this house is constructed. I can't see it. What is it? Foundation. I can see the thoughts coming and going. Where are they coming and going? Nobody has seen the mind. We give it a name, mind. We see waking dreams, sleep coming and going every day. Oh, where are they coming and going? How do I know that there is waking dream and deep sleep going? I know waker cannot go into the dream. He has to die in order for the dreamer to come up. Dreamer has to die in order for sleeper to come up. Sleeper has to die in order for the waker to come up. Then who is knowing? That is the substratum, which is transcendental. See? And that I am. That is why speech has to be suspended in the realm of Paramatma Tattva, because with the birth of the trio of speech, the speaker spoken and the manifestation or duality begins. Therefore, today in the meditation I asked you put your attention two ways. Put your attention from where the mantra is beginning. If you're chanting Om, where is the mantra beginning from? For that you have to slow down the mantra, and you can't forcefully slow it down. It has to happen. When it slows down, you catch the beginning of the mantra or the end of the mantra. Where is it merging into? Where did it arise from? And when we do that, then we realize that the presence of the mantra and the absence of mantra both are being illumined by someone. They are happening in the presence. When it becomes a japa jap, or you become so focused on that, suddenly a new disposition is there, where you're watching. Suddenly it dawns, hey man, both the presence of the mantra while it is getting expressed, and the absence of the mantra, which we call silence, both are illumined, both are happening in the presence. I am the witness of both. And when you come to this witness, and the witness becomes aware of itself, then the transcendental silence, then the prashanti, then you will not get disturbed. If you are just witnessing the sound and no sound, there is every possibility that the one who is witnessing can get sucked back into the sound or no sound and starts aspiring for, I want to be in silence, I want to be in silence. But once you recognize this transcendental silence, which is your essential nature, the Guru Tattva, the self, then whether sounds are there or no sounds are there, you are not affected after that. See? So that is why speech has to be, so this is the initial stage. The speech has to be suspended in the realm of the Paramatma Tattva. Until unless all the thoughts are not suspended, you cannot go to sleep, which is a happening. Same way in meditation. In your presence, the mind has to suspend all the thoughts while thinking about its essence. That is what is required. Because every thought requires, namely, a thinker. There is a thinker, there is thinked, and there is thinking. Just like knower, known, knowing, thinker, thinked, thinking. So as long as a thought is there, the I is there. We are trying to get freedom from I. Freedom from I is witnessing. Freedom of I is witnessing. Freedom of I is, right now this is I. I is attached to body, mind, and intellect. It is attached. Freedom of I is, now it is dissociated, it has become the witness. Freedom from I is where I is no longer a witness, but it recognizes that it is the infinite one. Without a thought, it comes to this realization by falling back into its own being. Here the witness, I, what is this I? This I is that which is detached to all this. But this one, it is not detached. It has gone back to its own source. Here the thought is still there, but not identified. Disidentified thought is called witness. Disidentified I is called the witness. And this is thought free, because I represents the conscious being that I am. I don't need to think to be. So, in this manner, meditation and contemplation on every word of this and other ovis takes one nearer to the substratum of one's own personality and to an experience of one's own being that is never denied, because you are the constant one. But you believe you are coming and going. The father comes and goes, the brother comes and goes, the son comes and goes, the wife comes and goes, the thoughts come and go, the breath comes and goes, the age comes and goes. We are obsessed with coming and going. But you are the constant one. And on that constant, all changes are happening. As if, don't forget that part, as if. So, last few meditations, some of the verses we have been taking for meditation. So, practice. Each one is a pointer to the self. Each one is the pointer to the constant principle. Where the means of knowledge disappear, there the Guru Maharaj, that is the Paramatma Tattva, is. How? Pramanachi parisare tay prameyachi avishkare navalame ye dhure nahi panachi. Where all the means of knowledge finally culminate in their absence and discover the self, Guru, is it not a wonder that he reveals beyond all the limits of absence? In the case of Atma Jnanam, self-knowledge, the means of knowledge, pramana, disappear in the frontiers of efforts to know. Just like that salt doll wanting to know the depth of the ocean, when it jumps into the ocean, the salt doll becomes one with the ocean. It is its desire to know, its identity, everything dissolves. There is no one left behind to pursue, to put efforts. Exactly the same way. Our mind must select something, some idea, some thought, some mantra, some altar. When it applies itself towards it, it should melt away, dissolve away like that salt doll. See? So when we begin meditation, we have put efforts to come here. We have put efforts to close our eyes. We have put efforts to repeat the mantra to the exclusion of all other thoughts. But all these efforts must lead to effortlessness of being. If that is not taking place, and we are obsessed with, no, how many malas I have to do? How many mantras did I do? How much time did I spend just now chanting? Oh my God, 1 hour went, still nothing happened. Nothing has to happen. That's when you will vanish. The personality will vanish. The individuality will vanish or dissolve. The limit pari of their absence is thus reached. So just like our eyes have a limit, have a spectrum in which they can function. Our ears have a spectrum in which they can function. they can hear only certain vibration of sound. Our eyes can only see certain vibration of light. But a chameleon with an octagonal eye can see something more beyond. A dog can hear far beyond our capacity of hearing. But yet, human being who has developed, he becomes clairvoyant. He is able to see beyond the norm of the physical eye. Clairvoyant, clairaudient. He is able to hear beyond the normal capacity of the ears. See? But that requires development. That's a siddhi. As you come closer, these things happen. See? So, when we are putting efforts, now with this physical eye, if I want to become clairvoyant, it is not going to be possible. I have to redefine what is I. I have to redefine for myself what does it mean to have a vision. Is it only vision of the eyes, or is it the vision of the mind, or is it the vision of the self? All the three places it's vision only. Where am I functioning at this moment? If I am functioning at the vision of the eye, the physical eye, then to expect to get to be able to be clairvoyant, it is an impossibility. At the mind level, yes, it is a possibility. But at the self level, it is not required. Because you are the center without circumference, so you are seeing from everywhere without going anywhere, if you choose to. So here he says, because they are absorbed in their own source, eyes cannot see themselves. This example we have taken before. When the eye is contemplating on its source, what is the source? Who knows the eye? Who knows the eye as the eye? The mind. When the eyes try to see the mind who is functioning through these eyeballs, the eyes will stop seeing the variety of forms. When the ear tries to hear the sound of silence, it will stop hearing all the outer sounds. They will stop making a disturbance on him, on the ear, and so on with the other senses also. See? Same way, when the mind looks at its own source, who is this for whom I am thinking so much? For who is this for whom I am planning so much? For who is this for whom I am accumulating so much? When it starts thinking about its source, the mind also vanishes. Just like the wave looking for its source. What is the source of wave? Water. Where is water? Is it other than the wave? No. It is permeating the wave through and through. So what happens? The wave which was extrovert, looking at other waves and living in fear of other waves, decides to become introvert and goes in search of its own source. And as it goes in search of its own source, it loses its waveness and realizes the infinite waters. See, this is exactly that will happen to us on the seat of meditation. because they are they are absorbed in their own source. Eyes cannot see themselves. So this is what is happening in your sleep also. Unmanifest mind is the cause. Manifest mind is the effect. So the effect is going back into its source out of ignorance, not out of knowledge. If it goes out of knowledge, then it's a different story. Then it is meditation. Similarly, all the instruments of knowledge which are functioning only because of the substratum called pure knowledge, when they focus on their own source, the knower, the pramata, the means of knowledge pramana, and the knowledge of the object pramiti, all disappear. Just like you as a person disappear when you go to sleep, if you bring about that, if you, instead of thinking of sleep, you think of the source, then the thinker, the thinked, and the thinking all will stop. The individuality will disappear. Individuality is there only because thinking is going on. Thinking goes, individuality goes. Because for the thinking, the thinker is required. The thinker is the individual. And who is individual? The pure consciousness identified with doing, with thinking. Thinking about what? Thinking about something other. But when this same mind is thinking about the self, which is its own essence, which is its own cause, as long as it's thinking, it is keeping it separate. But in that process, the mind dissolves, because we know it is not separate, it is the essence of the mind only. So with that knowledge, it jumps in, not knowing what is going to happen. So all the Triputi, the triad, dissolves. So what is the difference between an individual and a Mahatma, a realized master? In the individual, there is a thinker, there is a seer, there is a knower, there is an experiencer, there is a waker, dreamer, sleeper. For everything there is an erring personality which comes forward to take ownership of that. So thinker takes the ownership of thinking. Waker takes the ownership of the waking world, or gets identified to the waking world, and so on. But in a realized master, everything is happening, but there is no owner created. This I appears as the seer, hearer, toucher, feeler, thinker. So just like man appears as husband, brother, etc., where are these roles? Imaginations. Similarly, this I imagines on account of identification that it is the seer, that it is the knower, that it is the experiencer, that it is the Now we are going back to the source. We want to know the I as it is. And the realized master has done that. Seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, tasting, thinking, everything is happening, but no owner is born. How is that possible? Get there and find out. See? Because it's not, because this is something beyond the scope of the mind. We are trying to put words, but words are not enough to put that transcendental state into words. With the vision averted from the world of senses and turned inwards, desire of immortality and only that which was sought and which was always there remains, and that I am. What is that by knowing which everything will be known, or nothing else will be required to be known? Right now, we are using so many words to understand this Guru Tattva. And this will never give us the experience of the Guru Tattva until and unless we don't sit with ourselves and contemplate on the permanent, the constant principle that is permeating the mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the senses, and systematically we go back to the source. Merely by reading and listening, if while listening you are in that zone, good. But if you are just enjoying, oh, what a beautiful thought, oh, it was fantastic, what a wonderful ideas. These are not ideas. This is the direct experience of Jnaneshwar Maharaj. But as long as the words are utilized, it can become a concept for the unprepared one. So instead of becoming a person who appreciates this knowledge, don't appreciate it. He doesn't need validity. Jnaneshwar Maharaj doesn't need your validity that he has written well. Anubhavananji doesn't need the validity that he has given the commentary nicely. I don't need validity because I am putting it across in whatever manner. No. Nobody needs validity. But out of emotion, out of blessedness, this is what comes out at times. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. No. If you say thank you, which means you have accepted that Jnaneshwar Maharaj is separate to you, these words are separate to you, the teacher is separate to you. Lost the plot. For that moment you have lost the plot. So while listening, every sentence, every idea that is given here is transcendent, it's taking back you to yourself. Be there, be that. And the most wonderful thing about this disappearance into non-existence is that where the means of knowledge disappear, there the Paramatma appears. Where the husband disappears, there the man appears. Similarly, where the mind disappears, there the Paramatma appears. Where the means of knowledge disappear, there the Paramatma appears. That which is present after reaching the absence, there the Paramatma, the Sudguru, is fully present. When Ramana Maharishi says Prana Bandhanat Leena Manasam, if we put our attention where the in-breath and the out-breath juncture and merge our mind with focus, then what will be there? You are accessing the gap. What is that gap? Emptiness. What is that gap? Nothingness. What is that gap? Silence. Who knows? That you are. Same thing in today's meditation. Absence, and when the mantra stops, there is a gap. So either you take that who is the presence, good, that you are, or the one who is illuminating the presence and the absence of the thoughts, that you are. You have always been. There has never been a time that you are not. But which one? That you have to determine. Are you the husband? Are you the man? Are you the individual? Are you the witness? Or are you the Paramatma in essence? Choice is left to you. Nobody is going to force you. The struggle of the spiritual seeker is the inability to drop the objectification of the subject. Once this is achieved, one is in a state of perpetual contemplation. This is not achieved by someone. This happens. It is not an achievement. Because achievement is for that individual who is putting efforts. For him that is achievement. So understand when Swamiji is saying this, it is an happening. It happens. What happens? What was told in the previous verse. That where the means of knowledge disappear, and the last means of knowledge is I am that, I am that, I am that. Yeah. Tattvamasi, the teacher is saying, and yes, I am that, I am that. But it's still a thought. The I has to merge into that. All cognition through the limitations must cease. And the last cognition is at the thought level. Just like the last thought that I want to sleep must cease, must be absorbed, must be dissolved in order for sleep to begin. Same way, the last thought that I am that, Aham Brahmasmi, I am, I know I am. This obsession with thinking about that which I am, in spite of the thought, this must dawn. And this happens by grace. This doesn't happen by our efforts. We have to keep at it. And keep refining. Even though you have heard it so many times, me saying that this objectification must go, you have to be aware of it at that moment when it happens. Mere listening will not be enough. Yes, listening may build up conviction. Now you become, but that conviction has to be exercised. Because as long as a thought is there, you have a choice to think or not to think. Choose not to think. When the last thought comes that I am that. No, enough man. Why am I thinking I am that when I am? Who knows it? Because of our obsession with the thoughts, we want to keep thinking. Thinking can only be about some concept. Self is not a concept. It is in the presence of the self that last statement, I am that, is happening. What that statement is indicating is you. And you are not because there is a thought. You are in spite of the thought. You are beyond the thought. The self is beyond the thought. And this is our... Everyone knows that to some degree. And here Swamiji is saying that once this is achieved, that means a complete dissolution of the mind. Mind can only think in duality, subject-object. Mind must generate that surrender, that love, that conviction, that it is ready to dissolve at the altar about which it is contemplating on, the self. Meaning, dissolution of the mind means dissolution of duality. Subject object gone. Subject was accessing itself through thought. Now that thought has dissolved. Subject still remains because you are not dead. You are alive. You are conscious. Then one is in a state of perpetual contemplation, and this is how great masters live. We only look at their bodies, we look at their habits, we look at what they are eating, what they are not eating, whether sleeping or not sleeping, whether they are angry or because this is where our mind is. So we superimpose that on the great masters also. But if our mind is on the Guru Tattva, then we will see it in that manner. See? In this way, contemplate, contemplate, contemplate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Just sit quietly for a minute. Let it all percolate your